The Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society podcast.
Welcome to the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society, a podcast dedicated to suspense, crime, and horror stories from the golden age of radio. I'm Eric.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Joshua. We love mysterious old-time radio stories, but do they stand the test of time? That's what we're here to find out. Today, I've chosen an episode in honor of Father's Day. My Son John from Quiet Please.
Quiet Please was the brainchild of radio and screenwriter Willis Cooper, creator of another legendary radio series, Lights Out. Quiet Please debuted on the Mutual Broadcasting Network on June 8, 1947. In September of 1948, the series switched to ABC and remained there until its final broadcast on June 25, 1949. In total, 106 episodes were made, every one of them written by Willis Cooper.
Quiet Please is often categorized as horror, probably due to Cooper's roots in the genre, but as the author of a May 1949 article from Writer's Digest points out, there's no formula or pattern to Quiet Please, other than that it is always narrated in the first person by Ernest Chappell and has an eerie, slow-paced mood. Sometimes it's macabre, sometimes hilarious, but always entertaining. The same article reported that ABC received more listener requests for copies of Quiet Please scripts than for any other show.
And now, My Son John from Quiet Please, originally broadcast November 28, 1948.
It's late at night, and a chill has set in. You're alone, and the only light you see is coming from an antique radio. Listen to the sounds coming from the speaker, listen to the music, and listen to the voices.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please. The American Broadcasting Company presents Quiet, Please. This is written and directed by Willis Cooper, and this features Ernest Chappell. Quiet, Please for today is called My Son John. Shakespeare, King Henry IV, Part 1, Act 3, Scene 1. Owen Glendower, the Welsh warrior, says, I can call spirits from the vasty deep. And Hotspur replies to him, why, so can I, or so can any man. But will they come when you do call? They come when I call. I tried it only once, though. I don't think I shall try it again. Well, there's nothing to be afraid. It's still light outside. Sunset was only 2 minutes ago at 4:31. There's nothing to be afraid while there's still light. But later, we'll come to that. It was a year ago last Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, that my son John died. I'm a very lonely man. Some of my contemporaries insist that I'm a very hard man. Perhaps I am. But in my own defense, let me say that my hardness is possibly engendered by the fact that I've been so embittered and lonely for so very long. My wife, whom I love very greatly, died 3 months after my son John was born. For a long time, I lived with my son John alone, except for the necessary servants, medical attendants, and the like. I saw none of my friends. I allowed my business affairs to drift into the hands of my associates. I refused to see my friends. And gradually, my friends fell away from me. I lived for all those years almost a recluse. But my son John was a joy to me. I denied him nothing. He had friends. He loved life. And he lived it to the utmost. When the war came, my son John was much too young for service, a fact that irked him tremendously. And he exacted a promise from me that should the war still be going on, he would enter the service on his 18th birthday. Well, his 18th birthday was 2 years ago. And though my heart was wrung at the thought, I allowed him to enlist in the army, gave him my blessing. I could deny him nothing, not even this. And I hoped hard that he would not be sent overseas. But my hopes came to nothing, for within 8 months he was sent to Austria. And scant 4 months later, my son John was dead. I shall not try to describe to you my grief. It is overpowering. Let me simply say I was inconsolable. I had never forgotten my wife, my beautiful, beloved wife who had died and left me with a taste of ashes in my mouth. But she had left me my son John as a consolation. Now my son John was dead, and there was nothing left to console me. It's not surprising, I think, that I turned to the occult for relief. There was a woman, let her be nameless, she too is dead now. She was a very wise woman, skilled in things beyond the comprehension of the material world. I sat with her many nights in this very room, speaking to her of my love for my son John, and of my unutterable loneliness. And when I came, I said to her, listen, I said, can my son John, is there a way to call him back to me?
There may be.
I have been treated very unfairly by life, I think. I have been robbed of the only two treasures that life gave to me. First my wife, now my son.
I have tried to reach into the other world to have your son speak to you through me.
Why haven't you succeeded?
Perhaps you do not believe in me.
Yes, I think I believe.
You must believe completely, or I cannot succeed.
I tell you, I do believe.
Yes? Yes, I think you do.
Well, then,
What?
then what other reason can there be for not reaching him?
You say you don't know how he died.
No,
It's very strange.
not so strange. I don't want to know how he died.
I don't understand. Didn't the
I
government...
had a letter that told me that my son died, that they would send me details of his death. When that letter came, I tore it up without opening. I didn't want to know the details.
But you can write and ask him to send the details again. I mean, you can explain.
No, I don't want to know how he died.
There's not much I can do then. You know where he's buried?
No.
I would have to know that, I'm afraid. That can be the only explanation of why I have not been able to reach him.
Isn't there any other way?
It would be easier if you write and find out.
No. No, I will not do that.
Then
No other way.
there's a way to do anything.
And
It's dangerous for one who is not in a depth.
you're in a depth, aren't you?
I am. But you're not.
What do you mean by that? I don't...
You are the only one who can do it.
I can do it?
Yes.
How? How then?
Listen to me. I can teach you. I can teach you to call up your son in a way that will bring him to you.
Teach me then. Now?
You may live to regret it.
No. Teach me how to bring my son back. I'll pay you. I'll make you rich for life.
There's no need for pay. I have my own ways of becoming as rich as I desire.
Then tell me how.
You may bring about your own destruction.
I don't care. Let me have just a little time with my son again, and anything can happen.
I have warned you. Now give me your hand and listen.
And she began to speak. Here in this very room, as we sat there at that table. She spoke, and her eyes burned into mine. And she told me how to bring my son John back from the grave. That was a very simple thing to do, so simple that... No, I shall not tell you what it was I must do. It's very dangerous for one who is not adept, she said, and that's the reason why I shall not tell you. I must be alone, she said. I must be alone in a darkened room at midnight. And then I must do certain things and say certain words, take my hands in a certain manner, and wait. I turned out the lights at 5 minutes before midnight. I set my luminous dial watch on the table before me. The room was not completely dark. I hastened to pull on the window shade. And as the hands of the watch met at midnight, I did the thing I was to do. And I said the words she had taught me. And I placed my hands in the position she'd shown me. And I sound at the door. And after a moment, I spoke. Come in. Come in.
Hello, Father.
In the dark. In the blessed darkness, my son John's voice. I could not find my own voice for a long time. But John spoke again.
I could prevent her calling me, Father, but when you called, there was no other way.
John.
Yes, Father. I have come home.
I did do it then.
Yes.
And nothing happened. She said it was dangerous.
You haven't seen me yet, Father.
Turn on the light.
No. We'll talk first.
Talk? Oh, John, it's a joy to hear your voice.
I'm not happy about this, Father. You should have left me where I was.
No, John, if you can imagine the loneliness, the terrible...
Yes, I can imagine.
And you're not glad I called you?
No, Father.
I see that you're made happy, John. You'll have everything your heart can desire.
How do you know I didn't have everything I wanted before you called me?
Oh, I mean, were you happy?
No. No, not happy, but I did have... Now, I don't know.
John, where were you? Where were you, John?
Father, I deserted from the army.
You deserted?
Yes.
Well, if you deserted, it was still a very good...
Not for the life.
But I want to see
We'll
you.
talk first. Well, but I really had no intention of deserting at first, Father. I had 2 days leave, and I went exploring.
Were you... I mean, did the guards or...
No. No, I was in a part of the country where I wasn't supposed to be, of course, but everyone was very kind to me.
Well, what...
I was walking along a mountain road early in the evening. I didn't know exactly where I was. Then I saw the lights of a big house a mile or so ahead of me. And I decided to stop there and see if they could put me up for the night.
Did they?
No. Just as I turned into the driveway that led up to the house, a dog came running out from the shrubbery. Before I knew what was happening, I'd been knocked down, and the dog was at my feet.
Oh, John, oh, horrible.
In the morning, I woke up lying by the side of the road. I was pretty weak. I tried to crawl out, hoping somebody in the house would come out and help me, but I couldn't see the house.
The thing had dragged you away.
After a while, I felt strong enough to stand up, and I staggered down the road. A couple of Russian soldiers in a jeep picked me up, and somehow or other, I got back to where I was stationed.
My poor boy. But now, John...
And I died 2 days later. Then I woke up in the house. The big house I'd seen when the dog attacked me. And I was lying on a couch, and the dog... It wasn't a dog, Father. It was a wolf. The wolf was sitting alongside me, talking to me. So I stayed with him all the time, except at night, until you called me.
John, weren't you... I mean, didn't you...
Didn't they tell you in the letter, Father, that my body disappeared?
I didn't read the letter.
You should have. Perhaps you wouldn't have done this thing. Because now I can't be dead.
Unless...
Well, there's a way.
But you... something I can do, you mean?
Yes.
Tell me, John. Tell me so that I mean, if there's something that I might do inadvertently, something I might do without thinking, I'd want to know, so I wouldn't do it.
No, Father, this is something you can't do inadvertently.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes, I'm sure.
Do you want to tell me more? So we can... It's been so long, John. We can do so many things together. Shall I turn on the light now? Have you got used to being back?
You'll have to turn them on eventually, won't you?
Well, of course, I can't see you in the dark.
I can see you.
You can?
You haven't changed much.
I'm thinner.
I've changed.
I suppose you have, but... Will you turn on the light, John? I can't get up, you see. The shock of your death, you know. I had a little stroke.
I'm sorry about that.
But now you're back, maybe it'll be better. Oh, John, it's so good you're back again. Turn on the light. Please?
Well, shut your eyes. You can open them after I've turned on the light, when I tell you.
All right.
Keep them closed. Now, open them.
I opened my eyes, and I didn't believe what I saw. For my son John was not in the room with me, but a great, black, gray wolf stood beside my chair, stared at me curiously, with the eyes of my son John. I can call spirits from the vast and deep, I said to myself over and over again. I can call spirits. She warned me against it, I said to myself. She warned me, and I did it. But my son John, I thought. My son. John. And I spoke the words aloud. My son. John. And the wolf came over to me and laid a paw on my knee and spoke.
I'm sorry, Father. I told you I wished you hadn't done it.
Are you John?
Of course I am.
Would I ever see you as you were?
No, never. You see, Father, she told you how to do it. I had pity on her. I wouldn't come when she called me, because I was afraid of just this. I heard her talking to me, but I didn't answer, because I wanted to spare you this, Father.
I'm glad I did it. Oh, John, welcome home, no matter what shape you're in.
You see, Father, there's a catch in everything. Most of the things you've heard about, superstitions, old beliefs, all that, most of them are true. But what people don't know is that there's always a catch. It's much better not to meddle, Father.
I'm not sorry, John.
It would be much better if you hadn't done it, Father.
I love my son, John.
I loved you a great deal, Father. I loved you enough to make myself stay where I was until you made me come here.
What can I do for you, John?
Nothing, Father.
There must be something good. When you are alive, aren't you? Well, would you like something to eat, perhaps?
No, not anything. Well, I came as a wolf because I was more used to being a wolf than anything else.
You mean you can?
Yes. I can change myself into almost anything. That's one of the things he taught me. A bird, or a bat, or a cat.
Okay. Who is he?
Well, you've heard of him.
No.
Most people think that Bram Stoker invented him, but he's fiction. But he isn't.
Bram Stoker, that name is familiar.
Of course. He wrote a book once. A book called Dracula. You see, Father, we exist. There are thousands of us on the earth. More than anybody has any idea. And we're all alike. We're not alive, and we're not dead. And there are more and more of us every year. Because when someone dies, when one of us finally kills a person, that person becomes one of us too.
No.
And it's not bad, Father. It's not bad at all. Did you ever hunt? Well, we hunt. We hunt the greatest game of all, mankind. I could tell you.
John.
Yes, Father?
Now that you're here in New York, will you hunt here, too?
How else can I exist, Father?
John, no.
I'm sorry, Father, but that's the way it is.
Oh, what have I done?
You had plenty of warning.
Then go back where you came from.
No, I can't. I'll be with you forever, Father, until you die.
No.
He warned us, remember?
Well, won't you change yourself into your own shape then, at least?
That's the one shape I can't assume. It's one of the catches I told you about. Oh, I'm sorry, Father, but even if I could, I don't think you'd want to see me. Before you put this spell on me, I could assume my own shape whenever I wanted to. And I remember, people didn't like it. Screamed and ran. But I always caught them. Oh, I'm sorry, Father. You brought it on yourself. If you'd let well enough alone, I'd never have bothered you. I'd have stayed there with Dracula. Well, that's the way it is.
But, John,
I'm sorry, Father. I've got to leave you for a while.
Where are you going?
Why, I'm going hunting. No. No. Sorry, Father. I'll be back. I'll always come back, Father, so don't worry about me.
And before my eyes, the mean gray wolf vanished. And I heard a fluttering sound. And a huge black bat was flying out the open door. I endured my son John in numb horror for so long. I grew accustomed to finding a black dog gnawing away all day long in that corner over there and lazily waking up as darkness began to fall. I learned not to disturb the sparrow that slumbered through the daylight hours on the top of the bookcase there. Sometimes it was that same gray wolf lying there under the window from sunrise to sunset, growling a little in his sleep, yawning widely as he awoke, his red mouth and cruel long fangs gleaming in the lamplight. Oh, my son John was very discreet. It was a long time before I began to notice in the papers the stories of lonely people about the city and suburbs being attacked by a ferocious great gray dog or clawed by a huge tomcat. But the stories appeared from time to time, and I knew. My son John spent less and less time with me in the nighttime, although he was always there asleep during the day. And slowly, a conviction grew within me. A conviction that I, the bereaved father, and I, with the best intentions of a disordered mind, I was responsible for these murderous attacks. For had I not summoned back to my side this ravening horror that was my son John? I called on her, and the wise woman who had taught me to spell came to see me. The gray wolf was asleep beside the radiator, twitching, growling from time to time. And she came.
I expected you to call me long before this.
I was trying to decide, to prove something.
Well, did you succeed?
Yes, I succeeded.
Your son came back.
Yes,
Where is he?
there, on the floor asleep.
Oh? I see.
You warned me.
Yes, I warned you.
Do you know what he is?
Yes, of course, a vampire.
He says he can't be killed.
So?
You've been reading about the attacks on defenseless
I
people.
know about them, yes.
What can I do?
He says he cannot die.
He said that. Oh, he said there was a way, but I wouldn't do it.
Don't you know the way?
Of course not.
Did you ever read Dracula?
No.
I see. Well, probably you wouldn't do it.
What is it?
Your own son whom you loved.
Tell me. No. You do it.
Not I. Not I. I gave you the story. I can protect myself against vampires. I have nothing to fear.
But these other people, the ones
I'm not concerned with them. But you are.
Oh, I've done a terrible thing. Tell me what to do.
Do you think you can do it?
I will do it.
You will drive a wooden stake through his heart while he is asleep?
Oh, John. Oh, John, my son. And in his sleep, the great gaunt wolf that was my son John stirred uneasily and muttered through his dreams as he went away from there. I wheeled myself over to the bookcase. Surely I remember the copy of Dracula there. And after a while I found it, sat down to read it, to find out how to kill a vampire. I found that I read the details of what the good doctor and his friend did to the sleeping vampire in her coffin. I sat a long time staring at my son John, until he stirred and I hastily put away the book and wheeled myself back to my desk as he awoke. He wagged his tail as he stretched and got up. He went to the door. Hunting again, I said. And hunting again, he said, and he went away. Then I got to the telephone, and I called up a man I know. And after a while, he brought me, not without want, a limber hatchet, and a heavy butcher knife, and a great sack of garlic. And I sent him away, and lay down to wait till dawn till my son John should appear again and lie down to his last sleep. But it was only 3 o'clock in the morning when I heard the patter of feet in the hallway, and in a moment the door opened quietly, and a little white alien dropped in and jumped up on my bed. My son John was home early.
Well, Father? Yes, sir? I wasn't asleep this afternoon. I heard what she told you to do. I watched you go to the bookcase and get that book and read it.
John.
You were reading How to Kill Me.
Well, John,
Well, you remember she said she knew how to protect herself against vampires.
Yes.
She didn't.
John, what?
She won't bother me anymore.
What did you do?
I killed her.
Oh, no.
I was a lion, and I clawed her, and I bit her. Now she's one of us. And she's sorry she told you how to kill me. Aren't you, dear?
Of course, darling.
And I looked, and a tiny white cat sat on the foot of my bed, washing her face gingerly with an elegant paw. And I reached for my son's throat, and the little cat sprang at me with a wild yell. But my son John pushed her away. He sat there for a moment, laughing at me. And then he settled down beside me. And he said, "Father." And I listened, and listened, and listened. And once in a while, she put in a word, too. And as the night wore on, with John's stories of the greatest of all hunts in my ears, and the thoughts of never dying unless... And John seemed to read my thoughts. For he jumped off the bed and trotted to the place where I'd hidden the knife and the hatchet and the other things. And then in a minute, a great, tall gorilla came back in my room with the things, and he laughed, opened the window with his great hands, and threw them out. And then he turned around to me, did something, and he was a little female again. He jumped up on the bed beside me, and whispered in my ear,
Come on, Father. What about it?
and I said, "Well, at least I'll be with my son forever and ever. And it sounds like a better life than sitting in a wheelchair and feeling guilty." And I said, "Do you feel guilty, son John?"
Not at all.
"Do you?"
Of course not.
"Well then, will it hurt much?" It hurt for a moment when I felt those sharp little teeth in my throat, but it was over very quickly, and I thought, I ought to be a dog, too. And I felt something funny. She and John laughed, and here I was, a big, slavering Great Dane. And I said, "Why, this isn't bad at all, is it?" And we laughed and laughed and laughed. Because now I've got my son John back. And we'll be together forever. But really forever. And I've discovered that hunting is really fine. Maybe my son John and I will come hunting you sometime.
The title of today's Quiet Please story was My Son John. It was written and directed by Willis Cooper. The man who spoke to you was Ernest Chappell. And Warren Stevens played John. The woman was Kathleen Cordell. Music for Quiet Please, as usual, is played by Albert Bremer. Now for a word about next week, here's our writer-director Willis Cooper.
Thank you for listening to Quiet, Please. For next week, I have a story for you called Very Unimportant Person.
And so, until next week at the same time, I am quietly yours, Ernest Chappell.
And now, a listening reminder. 3 signet rings are the clues left in the mysterious disappearance of 3 men. You can learn what happened when David Harding, Counter Spy, investigates the case of the 3-ring murder this evening on your ABC station. It's ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
That was Quiet Please. here on the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society podcast. Once again, I'm Eric.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Joshua.
And that was the episode titled My Son John. I almost had Father's Day. We did it in honor of Father's Day. My Son John, which was picked by Joshua. So let's just start with, we have established on this podcast that we love Quiet Please. We love Ernest Chappell. We like Willis Cooper a lot. This show has a lot of accolade, and a lot of them are missing, and we don't get to hear all of them, but we know it's good, right? So I think that it's fair to say that Quiet Please now on this podcast is being judged against itself instead of against other old-time radio. Why did you...
You can't really put it in the ring with, like, the Hermit's Cave.
No.
Like,
Ding, ding, winner.
Hermit's like, Uncle!
No mas. It's a Roberto
You can
Duran
even throw the
reference.
Hermit's dogs in the ring with Quiet Please. You still lose.
So how many are left? Because I know that there aren't a lot of them.
Most of them exist. They just exist in poor quality.
That's what I'm saying. How many of them are understand? Are all of them listenable, I guess?
Depends how hardcore of a nerd you are. But the more old-time radio I listen to, the more listenable they become.
Yes,
I think if you acclimate to the static and crackle. And there is a great website, quietpleaseithink.org, where a lot of fans have transcribed scripts. So you can also do a little read-along as you're listening if you need a little clarity and help.
Which I did for this one, because your link was to that website, which had the script, and it helped greatly to read along with it, because I was getting lost in quality issues. And
I think, and this is a pretty solid
it is
sound
comparatively.
issue.
But that also has to do with me being old and headphones cranked all the way up, and I'm still... What are you saying?
What? His son's a vampire. What?
Go back.
I thought he was a werewolf. What?
Right. So why did you pick this one out of all the Quiet Please?
I like this one a lot, and then every so often when I think about it and realize there's a holiday in a week before we're recording something, I go, can I just somehow make a tenuous connection with said holiday? And so when I thought about Father's Day, I immediately thought of My Son John, just because I think there aren't a lot of radio shows I can remember listening to with a father-son relationship in horror.
Right.
I mean, there's relationships with children, and usually they're little and scary.
Right.
And
There's
creepy.
also a lot of father-daughter stuff.
Yeah, and if there is, it's usually like a bad father who abandoned me or is evil, and here it is about a loving relationship. The conflict comes from elsewhere, not their relationship.
I've been going back and forth on this episode. There are times when I'm listening to it, I go, oh, this is great. And there are times like, here's one of the things that I can't quite decide if I like or hate. It is very basic. It's just people talking. There's not a lot of Foley. There's not a lot of production value. It's two people in a room just having a conversation. That's 90% of it. Brilliantly written is what saves that, because that could really kill a radio drama if it's not great to listen to and really well written. But then I think it can get a little slow, even though maybe.
One of the things I think is brilliant about this particular episode, and it took me a second listening to figure it out, is they don't leave the room because the narrator is there and he's stuck in a wheelchair and he never leaves that room.
Right.
And we never leave the narrator.
Right.
Most writers would put that right at the top. They'd find some way to force in the exposition that I've been sitting here in a wheelchair. We're more than halfway through before he mentions that he had a stroke and he can't get up to turn on the light. And even that, you're like, maybe he's just sore.
A lazy stroke victim?
Yes, exactly. But it's not till the very end that he says, wow, now that I've changed to this Great Dane,
Right.
I can get out of the wheelchair.
Yeah.
I think that's the sweetest Hallmark moment.
The best Father's Day gift you can give.
It is a
Vampirism.
very, very slow developing story. You get it piece by piece, and I think there's a lot of build-up, suspense, beauty in that. And there's also, I think you kind of nailed it by accident at the top. What do you mean he's a werewolf? Oh, wait, he's a vampire? Like, there's a lot of, what's going on now?
I was doing my imitation of what I imagined you doing, listening to it.
That's the path I went. And it's so tonally weird because it's it's brave, I think, to do this sort of tone shift of just, we're going to throw in Dracula, like by name, Dracula, in the middle of this. That it certainly jarred me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Which I liked, but on the other hand, it also, for me, was a little like saying Taylor Swift. I mean, it was just a weird pop icon name.
Have you read Dracula? You know there's a lot of differences between.
Have you seen Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
You're right. I set you up for that one.
Yes. But he's right in the sense that my first thought was, that's got to be a rights infringement.
To be perfectly honest, I was hesitating to not have such a ridiculously outdated, like Mike Douglas. What?
Mike Douglas.
Why would I say that?
So
John Davidson, something really popular.
What's funny is that's the only contemporary thing I can say that my daughter would know. Taylor Swift. So I call everybody I hear on the radio, every new person, I go, is that Taylor Swift? Because it's the only one I can name. So
our apologies to Taylor Swift.
I hope she listens to this. That would make the last 5 years completely worth it. Taylor Swift listens to our radio podcast.
We do appreciate all the listeners who aren't Taylor Swift. Let's just be really clear about that. But if you're listening, please email.
But just every time
she's a singer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Every time the name came up, it sort of was jarring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of the purpose.
One thing I connected that to, and I will back up and admit that I possibly overanalyzed some of the Quiet Please scripts just because so many of them have been so fruitful when I analyze them. So I could be overanalyzing it. But it's interesting that most of his scripts usually take the time to go into arcane detail and world building and that kind of authenticating detail, whether it be about archaeology and Freemasons and whence came you, or oil rigs and the thing on the floorboard. But here, not only does he just count on saying Dracula, so you know all the vampire tropes he's going to use, but he also is very, for Willis Cooper, hand-wavy about the incantations that bring him back.
I really liked that. It made it seem more real.
Mm-hmm. But it struck me as so different from what he usually does that I also read into it authorial intent, like you're saying. Whether it works or not for the individual listener is a different story, but I think it was intentional on his part.
And I will say, I was just gleeful to get to we've just backed into a vampire story. I didn't see this coming.
Yes.
It's an interesting piece of writing where he says, it was a very simple thing to do. So simple that, no, I shall not tell you. And I thought, well, why are you running out of time? You know me. I'm just like,
I want to do this.
I immediately go to, oh, come on, tell me how you did it.
What if I had a dead son?
Yeah, right.
Think of somebody else.
That at first comes across as lazy. Well, fine, you're not going to write that.
But he gives a narrative reason.
Exactly.
He doesn't want to share it.
Right.
Because it's possibly dangerous.
Yes.
Well, and as he describes, I said the certain words, held my hands a certain way. It's enough of a general description of what's going on that you can kind of fill it in with your own version of what that would be.
Which is what we've discussed many times on this podcast. If you know how to write this stuff, then the listener is allowed to make their own choices and create their own work, and they don't have to do any work. And it's exactly right. We can picture that because of how this is presented and written. You can fail at that too. And you be like, please hit me over the head with a hammer and tell me what's going on here, because writing-wise, you're not pulling that off.
And part of that works because you are just sitting in a room with this guy, so you don't have a lot of other sensory input. I mean, we're not moving from scene to scene for you to have to keep catching up.
To unpack the Shakespeare quote at the top, because it happens to actually be a play I really, really like. Mm-hmm. Do you guys know it, or am I just talking for listeners' benefit? Because, listeners.
The play, I probably don't know it in the detail you do.
In the specific context, Hotspur, the character it's a conversation between him and an ally, and this ally claims all this mystical power. I can summon spirits. Mm-hmm. I was born under special stars. And Hotspur is this, as his name kind of implies, hotshot young general, military guy who everyone likes because he's super charismatic, and he's giving guff to this guy who says, I can call on spirits. But it is interesting because Hotspur, he is a character very much in a father-son relationship. He is sort of looked upon as King Henry IV as the son I wish I had. He's the guy I wish was in charge, as opposed to his own son, Hal, who becomes Henry V and is turns out to be this great, glorious guy who ultimately defeats Hotspur. I don't know how valuable this is to anyone who's listening, but it's neat, and I really liked it.
Well, it's on purpose, for sure, especially with Cooper. I also love that line. I can summon spirits. Me too, but
Is that the answer?
Right. We can all do that.
And then the father's line of "They come when I call." It's a great opening line. Not only does Cooper usually stick the ending, he usually sticks like the liftoff.
Right. It's really got a fairy tale quality to it. This reminded me of listening, or reading, I should say, an original Grimm's fairy tale. Back when Rumpelstiltskin pounded his feet into the ground until he tore his legs off, like that kind of Grimm's fairy tale. It has that quality to it, though. It's the idea of wishing for something that you shouldn't wish for and it coming back and the consequences of that. Also, the idea of talking animals. And when you hear or read a fairy tale, it's up to you to decide, how are these animals talking? What I love about this is that we don't get to decide, and they just sound normal. And did you picture their little wolf lips moving?
Now I am. Thanks.
But they didn't do it like they half bark, half growl. Or, you know what I mean? They just talk. Like Scooby-Doo. So I really loved that part of it.
Well, and the reveal of that, whoever the actor was playing the son, Ernest Chappell is always fantastic, but the son, too, had this really great, dry, it's ephemeral about his actual mood is just kind of, you should have done this, I don't like it, that tone, but to insist on, we're going to keep the lights out, you're not going to be able to see me for a while.
It made it scarier if he had played it as this menacing figure. Don't turn out the light or on the lights, Dad. That would kind of kill it.
That would
when
have
he
been
calmly said, "Leave the lights off."
And that would have been, as a director, the way I would have pushed it. Be scary. You know what I'm saying? So it's an interesting thing how that works.
The philosophy in my head that makes when I do it right is it's scary in the line. You don't need to put scary in it. Yeah.
Right. If it's written well, then just do it right.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we're getting back to. This is written really well.
Yeah. So if you have a line like "pass the mustard," then you should be like "pass the mustard," because that's where the creep.
Right. You should
I understand
always
acting.
You should always ask for mustard. Speaking of the great writing, I think this is my favorite line in the whole thing. My wife, who had died and left me with the taste of ashes in my mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Descriptive and beautiful and beyond what you normally get in the radio drama of the time. My wife, who had died and left me with the taste of ashes in my mouth, is much more impactful than, plot point, my wife's dead.
Yeah. The other thing I really like that's going on a little bit underneath here, and perhaps part of the reason that Cooper decided not to create a bunch of his own vampire mythology and to wave his hand at the spells and things, is he's saving room to really build this relational stuff between father and son. And that's where he uses the bulk of his time. And it creates this weird dual, seemingly contradictory theme that works well together of abandonment and summoning. Because he keeps going over and over again at the top about he could deny his son nothing.
Yeah, and that the son could not deny being
and
called.
And the son could not deny him. But in that denial, there's all these times where the mother died, so she abandoned them. The father withdrew from his life and abandoned his business and his friends. And eventually the son
and
abandoned
refused to look
him.
at how he died, refused to know anything about the details.
Yeah, and so, but all that feels like these familial relationships, but then it also has this connection to magic and the power of when you can summon something and who can be denied and who can't be. Like he could deny the voice of the other mystical woman, the medium, but he could not deny his father. And so this combination of magic and being a parent and the power.
The details of how he died and what happened to his body in that moment of, I need this in order to channel his spirit, seems kind of arbitrary, but pays off later as far as you should have known that.
And I like how she, without saying it, you can hear in her performance and somewhat in the script that she realizes what has happened, why she can't summon him. You know, it isn't said, okay.
Or is it after the fact? Because I think part of what Tim's saying, too, is that had she known the details of his death, she may not have
I think
given him...
I think she suspects it, though. I think that's what I get from it. That she says, okay, I think I know what's going
Or
on
maybe
here.
diagnostic. If I can't call this guy,
And you don't
is there
know.
a chance that maybe he's a vampire?
Right.
Or his phone's off the hook.
The coffin bell isn't working. It's rare for me to enjoy a slow burn. Get to the point. You know me. More things, smashing up things, whatever. If you do it right, I'm on board. And the slow burn of information about what happened to his son. And then I was walking and a couple days, and then this dog attacked me. And then, and it's just slowly being pieced together, slowly.
And I think you're supposed to assume he's a werewolf at that point.
Correct.
I think the vampire is
That's what I went with.
Twist and trick, because I was like, what?
Right. Either that or Frankenstein. No? Okay.
Did not.
No,
Or the Invisible Man. You just went down the list, right? Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yes.
He's a King Kong.
A King Kong.
Yes.
Again, what this has proven to me is that because he can write so well, you can get away with two people in a room talking, not a lot of Foley, slow development. You can get away with a lot of stuff that people can't get away with because he can write well. And in the wrong hands, this is super boring. That's what I take from this, and what I find so fascinating is that on paper, I should not like this.
As Willis Cooper is able to set up these stakes that are a little ephemeral, but really palpable. Like, this is important, what's happening with his relationship. I like this character, I'm invested in what he feels, and he feels these high stakes, so yeah, it works.
Yeah, the whole show from the very beginning, from the intro, from the quiet please, sets this intentional mood. It sets the pacing. If it opened, quiet please, and, an orchestra and everything like that, and then it was just like, hi, I'm Ernest Chappell.
Right. But there's nothing, not even Forward. I can't think of a Quiet Please that is fast-paced. It all follows its intro. Even when, the flowers are coming to life and you're falling in love with them,
Yes.
See other podcast listeners. But even that is slow and deliberate. And so the intro does prepare you for the pace of how he's going to take you on his story journey. I just said story journey. I hate myself right now.
Speaking of other story journeys, I felt like there were a lot of nods to The Monkey's Paw in this. Very similar idea about bringing a child back to life and the danger of it, and be careful what you wish for. Even the really nice, creepy detail that the son cannot take his human form again after he's been called by his father, but says that's probably good. You probably wouldn't have liked it. Right. So what did he look like? What was that form? That's what made me think of The Monkey's Paw.
I looked up Sealyham, by the way. That's the dog he became at the end.
Oh, it's like a terrier. It's a type of terrier.
You knew it?
No.
I'd never heard that word in my life, Sealyham. That's...
I thought that was gluten intolerance.
Yes, right. It's tofu ham. No, it's a dog.
Just an innocuous little...
It's a dog.
It's not a word we use anymore, is it?
Yeah, I wonder if it was just the type of dog that Willis Cooper had.
Right.
Yeah, it seems a strange choice right there.
Exactly.
It may have been the only dog they could hire that could speak well. I mean, this Doberman looks the part, but he's just terrible vocally.
I love you. I love you. Why did you summon me? Next. Someone give me a dog in here. They can talk. That's pretty much all I got. Any other final thoughts, gentlemen, on this?
I also think there's something very interesting in the end about happiness. Because he tells his son a little earlier on that I'll do everything I can to make you happy, and his son says, did you think I wasn't happy?
Right.
And then we move into this whole story of how he hunts and kills people, which freaks out the dad enough to consider killing him.
I think the ending says a lot about unconditional love, to a point of I'm not 100% sure that level actually exists in reality, but it certainly does in fiction. There's an unconditional love. Well, if I get to be with my kid, then I love him that much. I love a lot of people really a lot, but I have a hard time believing that in that situation, be like, yep, sure, let's go that route.
That's often a structure of you have a character that you sympathize with and you understand them, and they go down a path that you sort of like, yeah, I see that, and the end is they take that one step past where you can go with them. And I mean, that's the end of their story.
It's one part of the story where I can't decide if it's, again, I keep using the word intentional here with the script, but if he means for us to not know for sure how the father feels there in those last moments before he becomes a vampire, or if it's just a weakness, because essentially what happens is his son figures out that he's going to do him in, kills the medium, and he kind of really has no choice. There's one way of viewing it. That way. So we never get to know. And I'm wondering, do you think that's intentional on his part to never really know where that decision came from? Did he really change his mind out of this
unconditional love,
undying love? Or was he always half-hearted about that? Was he always hoping
manufacture a scenario where this
he's literally talking in front of his sleeping dog son. So he couldn't have wanted him not to hear.
I think it was because he found it impossible to kill that cute little Sealy ham. What are you going to do, choke it?
I love the little casual reference because the medium says, oh, I know about vampires, I'll be fine. And his son's just like, I turned into a grizzly bear and tore her apart.
Hey, turns out she didn't know about vampires. Isn't that what he said?
Something along those lines. It's a nice little moment.
Yeah, so, faced with that moment, I would say that I would definitely become a vampire for you, Tim, not you, Josh.
Aw,
that seems reasonable.
I would maul a psychic for you.
I just want you to know where we all stand.
Sure, good.
In case this comes up, so there's no doubt at that point where you're like, wow, really? No, I told you years ago.
Why are you even coming to me now? We literally recorded it. I have to play it back for you. I will not become a vampire for you. That's fair.
All right. Final vote, Tim.
If it were not fighting just itself, I'd say this is a classic. This is an amazing classic thing. In the category of just Quiet Please, this is an excellent example of it. I don't know if it is the Quiet Please I would put out there for the first one you must listen to. I'll say a qualified classic.
Yeah. I'm going to say the exact same thing. I cannot help but just judge this against other Quiet Please. I will say, out of all the Quiet Please I've heard, this is just as good as all of them. It's great. And so, qualified classic, absolutely. Bravo.
Yeah, it obviously stands the test of time. It's Quiet Please, like we keep saying. I mean, I think one of the things that happened with Quiet Please is we just jumped in and tore through the very best Quiet Please. And
on the top
best
of this,
Quiet Please are some of the best
ever
radio dramas ever.
Best stories,
Yeah. They're phenomenal. So this is not a classic of Quiet Please, but that's just because the classics of Quiet Please are amazing. But this is definitely one of my favorites.
All right, Tim, tell them stuff.
Please go visit GhoulishDelights.com. That is the home of this podcast. You'll find other episodes of the podcast there. It's a great place also to get a hold of us. You can leave comments on episodes, respond to other people's comments. You can find links to our social media, Facebook, Instagram. You can also send us a message if you have episodes you'd like us to listen to that we have not yet, which if we have, we'll let you know.
You can also go to patreon.com/themorals and support this podcast. Become a member of the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society. We really appreciate that. We've got rewards there. Go check them out. You can also go to iTunes and write a review. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know who you'd become a vampire for. That's totally cool, too. But, thank you for listening.
All right, coming up next, what are we doing?
We have a listener request, and we're going to be diving into an episode of Inner Sanctum called Till Death Do Us Part. Until then...
Look out!
Come in. Come in.
Hello, Father.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a one-boy, cuddly toy, my up, my down, my pride and joy. People, let me tell you about him. It's so much fun. Whether we're talking man to man or whether we're talking sun to sun, 'cause he's my best friend. Yeah, he's my best friend.